Before we begin, the class instructor, Kevin Fang, would like to, she's the associate professor in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Planning. He'd just like to say a few words and welcome all of us. Kevin?
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Fang, an associate professor at the Sonoma State Department of Geography, Environment, and Planning. Obviously, we've got a bunch of students in the class here in the Zoom, as well as we have folks in the classroom. And we're happy to have members of the public join us for the talk today. And really excited to hear from our speaker, Linda, today on some of the work that she does up in the North Coast.
Thanks, Kevin. Um, we're happy to be collaborating with you on this project and look forward to doing this more in the future. First off, let me just tell you a little bit about the Center for Environmental Inquiry here at Sonoma State University. Our role is to empower students of all ages and all disciplines to address the environmental challenges of our North Bay. Our motto is to turn education into action, and we provide outdoor education learning experiences on campus and on our three natural preserves. We have one on Sonoma Mountain, the Fairfield Osborne Preserve, one in southern Mendocino County, which is the Galbraith Wildlands Preserve, and one in Canwood, Los Guilacos Preserve. And our classes, our workshops, and our tours are designed to build skills and to help people with experiential learning as they try to solve these environmental challenges. We also invest in real world projects, working with faculty, community, and students across all disciplines to develop projects focused on finding solutions to these problems. Our presenter today is Linda MacElwee. Linda is the Navarro River Watershed Project Manager and Native Plants Specialist with Mendocino County Resource Conservation District. She has been with MCRCD since 2005, helping farmers and ranchers on riparian revegetation projects. We ask that you all remain muted during the presentation and put your questions into the chat. I will monitor and I will interrupt Linda as it seems appropriate if need be. Otherwise, she will answer your questions during the Q&A period toward the end. Our students have to leave at 12:50, and so we're going to prioritize their questions after Linda's presentation. So students, if you would would you make some kind of an indication that you are a student in your questions so that we know to put your questions first. And the program is being recorded, and we will send you all a link to the recording when it has been posted to YouTube. So Linda, it's yours.
Thank you so much, Margot. Happy to be here. Can you see my presentation in slideshow mode, everybody?
Yes. Yeah, we see it, Linda.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about the work that I do and we do in the Navarro River watershed. I work with the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, otherwise known as the RCD. I'm going to be going through, I have probably more content to share in the amount of time that I have. So I'm going to I want to get through as much as I can of the slides. And, I'm going to share a lot of information quickly with y'all. So just for our students, really welcome. I'm really excited to talk to you about the work that I do in the watershed. I think there's tons of opportunity in restoration for our youth, and the future is bright for restoration across the planet. So we need you, and we're really excited that you have an interest in watershed restoration. So thanks again. So I work with the Mendocino County RCD, and this is coming up on my 20th year, but basically we work, our mission is to conserve and protect and restore wild and working landscapes. Sorry, I've got times going on. So, sorry everybody, I need to not have timings. Sorry, real quick. No timings. And share again. And I'll go back. Okay, thanks. We should be in business now. So our mission is to conserve, protect, and restore wild and working landscapes to enhance the health of the water, soil, and forests in Mendocino County. We've been around since 1945. We have four primary programs at the RCD. We have the water program, soil program, forests, and land. The land program is primarily has to do with the Willits bypass mitigation lands, where we work to conserve those lands in perpetuity. And other than that, we work across the entire county. And just to give you a very brief introduction to RCDs, if you haven't heard of them, I think we're one of California's best kept secrets. Basically, every county in California has basically one RCD at least, usually. Sometimes, there, oh, that sounds like we have somebody in the background. Um, and they're every RCD, but the RCDs were originally established after the Dust Bowl, and the federal government created the Soil Conservation Service. It's a federal program, which is now called the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS. And I apologize because there is a lot of alphabet soup in the work that we do. So there's a lot of logos. I mean, a lot of logos, but also just acronyms. So the RCDs were originally established as soil and water conservation districts, and they're across the country. So you might know them as other names, but in California we call them resource conservation districts, or RCDs. And we work very closely with the federal partners of NRCS. So the Soil Conservation Service became the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and they have federal programs. They administer a lot of similar type work that the RCDs do. The resource conservation districts do not generally have any programmatic funding like NRCS does that comes through the federal programs. But we can apply for competitive grants, whether they're federal or state or local grants, and we can match our work to NRCS's. And we also work closely with UC Cooperative Extension. So in a way, there were like three sister agencies: Resource Conservation Districts, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and the UC Cooperative Extension. And we all fulfill different roles and work together to help landowners on managing and stewarding the resources. So I'm going to welcome you to the Navarro River Watershed. I'm not sure, can you see my tools in front of everything, or you're just seeing the slideshow? Just want to confirm, because I've got some things on my screen that I don't think you're seeing, correct?
We just see the slides.
Okay, great. So this was one of the big early projects that we did, was the watershed signage, to welcome people to become aware that they were living in or entering into the Navarro River watershed, or into a watershed. And a watershed, just to back up and just to state you may already know this, but it's basically all the ridge lines that drain down into a specific basin. And those basins, down to the valleys or from ridge to river, and all of the tributaries that come together, is the watershed. And they will drain out to the ocean, or it could be into a lake. But here we drain out to the ocean. So basically, here's the Navarro River watershed. It is like to very endearingly think of it as an upside down rubber chicken. And so here we have the coast out here. I'm in Boonville, so I am right here. And Yorkville is out here. And the town of Navarro is somewhere down in here. We've got Philo. And so there's 5 major subbasins that make up the Navarro. We have, starting here at the top of the chicken's head, is where the Sonoma State's SSU's Galbraith Wildland Preserve is, right in around this area. Actually, it's that fish. You can see there is Yale Creek, where this past winter there was coho salmon spotted, and a really exciting large woody debris project just went in. This is probably the longest of all the tributaries. It is a little different in this watershed because basically the Navarro River doesn't start till right here, which would be a little bit different. And if I were to name it myself, this would probably be the Navarro River with these other tributaries coming in. But the Rancheria starts up here in Yorkville. You go out Elkhorn Road. These are very fragile soils, large ranches for the most part, some forestry, 36 miles or something just to get this whole watershed. As you move into Anderson Creek Subbasin, we're now in the Anderson Valley. So we're coming in from Ukiah, and you can basically, as you come over the hill, you'll see the Navarro Watershed sign. And these are also very fragile soils, but have really great farming down here. We have a lot of vineyards in this region. And you're traveling, this is 253, so you're really coming through the heart of Anderson Creek Subbasin. Then you have Indian Creek Subbasin, which is pretty wild and woolly. It's hard to get back into this back region. This is where Peachland Road will come out here. If those of you that live locally are aware of this, Peachland comes out here. Then we drain off the backside into basically Peachland is here, and you're draining into Indian Creek and also into Anderson. So Con Creek is here. This is like Peachland kind of comes up here. So very hard. I haven't even been back into some of these areas because it is pretty remote, hard to get back in here, but beautiful watershed, steep. You would see this when you come into Philo. These three tributaries come together. The Rancheria, Anderson, and Indian come together right here to form the Navarro River. And so they spell out rain. Rancheria, Anderson, Indian form the Navarro. So here's the main stem of the Navarro River, starting here. More great vineyard land in here. This is Mill Creek, which is a priority area for where we've been working with the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And then here's the North Fork Navarro that comes in from Compchi, and then Flynn Creek Road kind of comes along here. So this is really our coho stronghold for the watershed. We have wild runs of coho salmon and steelhead trout. And then we get into the estuary. There's a USGS gauge about 5 miles in that has been basically collecting data since 1950 for stream flow. And that's really valuable to have that data set. And still functioning and very usable. So this is the estuary, and there's some new work happening in this region as well. So there's our beautiful Navarro River watershed. I wanted to just point out this guide is just recently published, our second edition. There is also a map of this in the back of the guide. They're both available on the website at mcrcd.org. And this has chock full of information about watershed restoration and stewardship. So just wanted to point that out to you. And need to move you guys around a little bit here. But so then, sorry. Basically, we have in watershed restoration, every watershed, not every watershed, but because the Navarro was listed early on in 2000, I say early on, that's when I moved here, so it's early on for me. But in 2000, it was listed for what's called total maximum daily load, TMDL. Now, this is a designation by the EPA for impairment. And watershed and water bodies some of them get listed. And many of Mendocino and the North Coast watersheds are listed. The impairments in the Navarro are for too much sediment and too high of temperature. And this was probably related to a lot of the logging and ranching practices, legacy practices that happened for the past 150 years. And then there has been some very large storm events that we know about in terms of over the years after the war Second World War, a lot of heavy equipment came back from the war, and they really went heavily onto some of the logging into the hills and even up the creeks, going up the creeks and into accessing the hills slopes. And so very heavy logging. And basically, then we had the 1955, which was the largest flood on record. I'm sure there's been bigger ones, but the 1955. And then there was still more logging in 1964. There was another big, large storm event, and a lot of sediment came down during this time. So a lot of our that designation has to do with salmonid habitat. So a lot of the those gravels and fine sediments got kind of caught up in what the spawning gravels, and basically the fish need clear, cool water, and they need oxygenated, like gravel size to cobble size for their nests, which are called redds. And those redds got basically filled in with fine sediment. So they need that oxygen. It just choked up the redds for the most part. So we've been working since early days on sediment, addressing the sediment issue. And then later we switched more towards temperature, and I'll talk to you more about that. So coho salmon were listed as endangered in 2005. Steelhead is listed as threatened. We do have wild runs of salmon and steelhead, and it is primarily in comparison, an undammed system. Although we do have some small legacy dams, a lot of the fish passage has been dealt with, although there's still a number of fish passage issues that are still on the list to be dealt with. There's some in-stream flow policy that has to do with maintaining in-stream flows. Cannabis became legalized in 2018. There's a vineyard order that's coming in, just coming online between 2025 and now. It's just been adopted this year, but won't come into effect. I think it's 2028. So these are some of what I would call the drivers of the work that we're doing. And this is what tells us what to do and where and how to prioritize. So just to say that there was a Navarro River Watershed Restoration Plan that came out in 1998 from the Anderson Valley Land Trust and the Mendocino County Water Agency worked on that. And really, we came in as the RCD in 2000 to start implementing that plan. And that was really also a super important document. You always need to start with a plan, and then that tells you what the priorities are of where to work and what kind of things need to be done. So putting all this together, we had the North Coast Regional Watershed Management Plan. There's a sediment action plan to meet that sediment total maximum daily load. There's targets that are to be met, that are set for the Navarro to meet those standards and to get back to where it would become what we would call a healthy system again and become delisted. That's a ways away. Temperature became quite the issue. In terms of 2012, we really had some serious drought years. 2013, 14, you may know. 2014, there was a zero return on coho, but the flows were so low that there's a sandbar at the mouth that never opened. So we had a zero return for coho that year. And that drought lasted until 2016. And then we had the 2020 to 2022 years of drought, which were basically broke, I think, the previous record of 1976-77 drought. Now, it's a very flashy system here in the Navarro, so we get very high flows. So we can go up to 60,000 cubic feet per second and down to, for like weeks at a time, down to 0.5 CFS, cubic feet per second, can be the range. There was a temperature action plan that came in 2014, and there's coho recovery plan and a multi-species plan. Now, these again are all like guiding documents for helping us to understand where to work, where the priorities are, and what needs doing where first. And that's where we go with grant dollars to bring those dollars in to address those issues. I'm just going to show you this photo here is down in the North Fork, and this just looks like kind of gorgeous natural system down there. That green blue water, super fishy. They like the clear water. This turquoise water comes kind of in the springtime, and this is when particularly the steelhead, and you see that green water in there, you know that it's feeling and looking very fishy. So coho salmon, I said, are endangered, and I do have numbers on them. We've been down to 0, as I was just saying, but then this past winter we had a historic return of around 2,500 adults returned salmon, which is the first positive news we've seen in the 20 years I've been doing this work. It's been more about preventing extinction than really getting towards these recovery targets. And now we could be on an exponential lift, and we hope that's the case. Salmon have had an amazing return over this past year up and down Mendocino coast and the North Coast. So salmon have come into many of the tributaries where we haven't seen them in decades. So that's very encouraging news. Steelhead, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers for 2024 or 25. They don't seem to be as robust right now. So I'm not quite sure what that means for the recovery of steelhead. They have been listed as threatened. A lot of the dollars for grant dollars have been going towards the coho salmon. And I'll show you that this is just sort of shows you where the targets are and where we've been. So 2023, we had 184. So we're still quite low. These numbers this past winter, though, really jumped. So the target, these are the historic numbers. The population targets here are 5,700. This number, as you saw, was about 2,500 for coho last winter, which is just beyond exciting. And you can see these fish over to the right. You guys got to move you guys over, but we've got the adults coho here. This is a coho young of the year. They call them yoi or juveniles, and they have this sickle-shaped fin in the back and a very round eye, like a goat eye. And then they also have this rear sickle-shaped anal fin. The steelhead trout are down here. These are the young of the year for the steelhead, and they don't have quite the same sickle shape on the bottom, the anal fin, and their upper fin is spotted. And this is how we tell the difference between able to identify the young of the year, which is another way we track the populations and where the fish have spawned. So here's basically the Navarro River, the priority areas. Here's our North Fork. This is where a lot of money has been put into the North Fork as a stronghold for Central California coastal coho salmon. CCC is an evolutionary significant unit. And so we'll be working our way up. We are spending a lot of time in Mill Creek. This has been a focus area for us. We'll probably be moving into Indian, and we look forward to getting into the rest of the watershed more and more in the coming years. Basically, one of the things that we've been doing for watershed restoration is working with the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited, and we came up with an approach we're calling collaborative water management. So we've done this for the Mill Creek watershed and the North Fork Navarro, where we basically go in and we do a lot of scientific analysis to get some baseline data, and we look at the needs of the watershed, the water needs, the type of projects that the landowners in those specific areas that are relevant to helping landowners increase their water security while maintaining in-stream flows or enhancing the in-stream habitat. So it's meant to be it's all voluntary and collaborative with neighbors, and incentivized through grant dollars and solutions that I'll get into some more about the solutions, a whole bucket of strategies that we rely on. And there's, of course, the local groups that help provide some of that technical support. And the basic is to improve water supplies for people and fish. And so we've worked off of work from the Matol as well as down in the Russian River watersheds as well. Has given us a lot of models for replication to work off of. So there's a lot of science. I want to encourage our students that there's a ton of science that if I come to this work more as a layperson and from the farming background and permaculture, but my love has always been in creeks. And if I had to do it over again, I would have gone more into the science part of things. But I do appreciate being a generalist as well. And I think that I consider myself kind of a translator between the scientists and our landowners to try and make the information understandable and relevant to our community members. So we have a gauge network. There's about 18, 19 gauges on the tributaries. We do stream flow monitoring, groundwater monitoring, and stream flow modeling. And so we do fish surveys. Mostly this is done by Trout Unlimited. And one of the things that early days was kind of missing from the conversation here in the watershed was that we didn't have the data to back up the needs and why we were saying that the fish needed help. And so bringing in the science and the data to ground our conversations in the community around that science and data is really, really helpful for me to be able to do the job that I do, because that's where we ground our conversations. That's where we come from to be able to make this understandable and relatable to people and meaningful. So we've gathered a ton of data. And we've also explored different strategies. This is part of our bucket of strategies. On farm, we have irrigation use efficiency and water conservation. We have these are off-stream storage tanks, and then basically working with the landowner to get to a place of feeling like understanding their water needs. We balance their water needs to meet the needs of the stream. This is Blue Meadow Farm in Philo, and they have a total of about 100,000 gallon tanks. This is a rainwater catchment tank, and this tank over here is 63,000 gallons. That is what we call off-stream storage. Between these two tanks, we also helped get them a new small irrigation use permit so that they draft straight from Mill Creek, which is a Coho stream. It's been Coho presence, but then this year it popped. There's now about 800 young of the year in that creek. And so they forbear pumping from July 1 till November 1. So they actually have enough water that they gather in the wintertime to not need this water to pump during the summer season, which is the low flow season, and when the fish need the water the most as well. So everybody needs the water at the same time, and this is one of our great solutions that is really making a difference. We've been working with landowners. This is part of the collaborative sort of approach where coordinating timing of diversions among different landowners along a certain reach. We are working on potentially doing a flow release, and this is where we have existing ponds where the people don't necessarily need the water, but we can use that water to put it back in stream. And this is all developed during severe drought years. So this is when this is really valuable, really low drought. If there's water available, let's put it back in the stream if we can, and make that available, some extra flow for the fish. Then there's the groundwater infiltration, and we've been stuffing gullies with small Doug fir boughs and small trees to reduce the fuel load, and we're putting it into the gullies to slow and spread and sink the water and hold the water in the soils and repair some of these incised streams and tributaries and gullies that come off the hill slopes. Floodplain reconnection. If we can let the stream access floodplains, it can spread out and it can release some of its energy that way. The fish can rest in those wide benches, and it's a win-win for just infiltration as well to slow that water and let it sink into recharge the groundwater table. The forest management and fuel load reduction and fire preparedness is a really important strategy, probably a priority for all of our landowners since 2017 in our new the fire regime in California that we've been experiencing. So this is addressing fuel loads, improving our oak woodland habitat, growing bigger trees, and just helping to make our wildland urban interfaces much more fire resilient. And I have just one more thing over here before moving on, and that's storm-proofing roads for the 100-year storm events. So we've been doing road work since the early 2000s to try and make our roads basically hydrologically invisible by addressing culverts, upsizing them to the 100-year storm event, rolling dips, outsloping, and then these are all strategies called progressive road techniques that have been implemented in most, if not all, but many of the rural subdivisions that we have here with a lot of the road networks. So this infiltration and groundwater recharge, to slow it, spread it, sink it. So we have our upland areas of the hill slopes. And so starting at the top of the watershed all the way down, we're trying to slow and spread the flow and sink it into the ground because to reduce that flashiness that we have in the system where the water, we've sped up the hydrology through all of the culverts and gullies and incised streams from what we call impervious surfaces. And so we're just trying to repair some of that, what we call the drain age to the retain age. And so we're moving much more in that direction to hold onto the water longer in the soils higher up in the watershed. So I talked about some of all of these other things, but we've got swales, off-stream ponds, wetlands, road upgrades. Carbon farm planning is where we work with our vineyards to improve soil health. And that helps the farm to retain their soil, grow in their productivity on farm, keeps the soil covered, and help to sequester more carbon on farm. So again, addressing the channel incision and the fuel reduction.
Linda, you have about 10 minutes.
Great. So this is that off-stream storage project, a larger view of it. We've also been putting large wood into the streams, and this is a really important tactic that is part of what happened early days in the 80s. It was thought that there was basically from the logging residue and the legacy logging times, they were probably choked up with too much wood in the creeks, but Fish and Wildlife sort of overdid it, and they had a campaign to take out the wood because they thought it was impinging on the salmon habitat. Well, it turns out this wood is where the fish are. If there's wood in your creek, the fish are hanging out under there. So we're spending a lot of time and reinstalling wood into areas. And what happens is the heavy flows, the quick flows come in, they create eddies, this slows down, and it sorts the gravels. So that's a really important part of what happens with the large wood. You end up with pools that get deeper, so there's summer refuge, there's protection and cover from predators, and there's the sorting of the spawning gravels is really important function. We've also put up some neighborhood signs, and this is along the Mill Creek subbasin. This is the Nash Mill side, and this is the Holmes Ranch side. And we just let landowners know what time of year we're in, if it's the spawning or juveniles, and how the flows are looking, and just to keep that people's minds. Looks like I did have a slide here that's not quite filling in. So, there you go. So we want to improve the watershed's carbon sequestration potential and support sustainable economies and meaningful local jobs, build ecosystem health and resilience, and engage the community. So these are some more of those carbon practices that help the watershed. We have biochar, promote older and larger trees. Again, all of these things, avoiding conversion, restoring riparian cover. So this is a big one for temperature. That's a big thing is temperature and also increasing flows. So keeping water in the streams. This slash for soil restoration is part of the gully stuffing, increasing our urban cover. We have a lot of vineyards, so increasing soil carbon on farm, and then restoring the oak savanna that is here, and also that would also address some of the Doug fir encroachment that we see on our oak woodlands. These are some of the example projects that we've been working on. This is at Hush Vineyards. This is a rainwater catchment system and a rain garden. So we're creating pollinator habitat and increasing biodiversity. We have some interpretive signage. So there is this is a great project with the vineyards that have basically a public interface. So it's a way that we can, with the vineyards that come to the tasting rooms, to come and learn about the watershed and some of these strategies that we've been employing. So we have how to capture and sink the rain, and then enhancing stream flows as we into Mill Creek, which is back here now. These are at our schools. We have creek trails at both of our schools. I don't have photos of them, but creek trails at both of our schools. So trying to create a watershed literate community here, starting with the schools. This is, we did a drought response outreach program for schools. And this is a rain garden. This is when the rain garden is filling up. It has some curb cuts and captures the rain off of the impervious surface of the parking lot. We plant it with native plants and wildflowers, and then we get to work with the students. So they get to learn about native plants and some of these restoration projects. We also have there's a rainwater catchment project at the elementary school. This is led by Chris Bing, who was the art teacher. And I just love this Van Gogh's Starry Night with the adapted for a salmon theme. And it's just a wonderful project, and the water kind of overflows. And then we also have some landscaping that is still coming in here, but this water is used for the landscape. At the junior senior high, we built some infiltration basins right through the parking lot so that this side of the parking lot drains and collects some of those pollutants that come off of the parking lot. And this also was planted with native plants and pollinators. And this captures and sinks a lot of groundwater. And rather than it going into the storm drain, which is over here, and piped out to the creek, it slows it down and holds it in the landscape. So it just reduces that amount of flow that's going into that stormwater pipe and into the creek and the pollutants. This just is also a rain simulator, and it just show we bring different parts of soil here, and we put the same amount of water into these little basins and let it wash through here. And you can just kind of see this is sort of I think this is the undervine, and where there's no cover, and you can see where we have a lot more sediment in this basin. This is the natural area on the edge, and it looks like you could just drink this water. And basically, none of this, and I know this isn't even complete, but none of this could be done without everybody. This is when I know there's the approach that I take with a watershed restoration is, for a while, maybe it was easy to criticize others, and really we're all part of the problem and we're all part of the solution. And so we all have a role to play, but we cannot do it alone. This is absolutely everybody with their shoulder to the shovel and to help making a difference. And so it is an exciting time because we are seeing some positive, whether it's the weather. We've had 3 good storm years. We're hoping for another one. That could be part of it. But we are seeing the returns on the North Coast like that we have not been seen in decades. And so this is I think the watershed restoration is a part of that equation. It's certainly not all of it, but it is a part of it. And so I think we can make a difference. And I just want to encourage our youth to get involved, stay involved. And basically, I think that's the end of my presentation. And if anybody would like to be in touch or have questions, we can open it up.
Thank you, Linda, very much. So we still have a little bit of time before our students need to leave, and I'm wondering if any of you have any questions for Linda. I think you alluded, Linda, to your generalist background and getting to the work that you do. Um, can you say a little bit more about your trajectory of your work, and then but
Sure.
if there are any questions, put them into the chat, and I'll give them to Linda.
Well, so I say my background was more in farming. I studied history, sociology, and photography in school in the desert of Tucson, Arizona, and I've been a native plant enthusiast. So plants have been my entry to the natural world. And I was studying permaculture early on in the early 90s. That really opened my understanding to the natural processes of wind and fire and soil and forests and interfaces. So that was a wonderful opening for me. And I did grow up in creeks. That is the place where I spent a lot of time in creeks. I also, as an adult, I moved to California to study, learn the ecology up here in 1995 and went to San Francisco Zen Center. So I sat and studied Zen for a number of years, just getting a little personal here, but I thought about what is most important. And to me, when we moved out of San Francisco Zen Center, we moved up to this area. And we'd been at Tassajara, you may know that. But basically, what seemed clear to me, I saw a sign that talking about volunteers and working in the creek in the Carmel watershed. And I said, that's what I want to do. And that's what I've been doing. I volunteered. I want to tell this to the students. I volunteered both for my early career at Native Seed Search in Tucson, where we grew out native varieties of crops from the Southwest U.S. and Northwest Mexico. I volunteered for that position, and then I became the garden manager and responsible for growing out these endangered crops. When I moved to the Navarro watershed, I just volunteered with Patty Madigan. She was the watershed coordinator at that time, and she was my mentor. And I just showed up for a number of years as a volunteer until I ended up getting hired part-time in 2005. So follow your heart, volunteer, just go and show up where your heart takes you, is what I would say.
Thank you. Are there any, I'm looking in the chat. I don't see any questions from students. Are there any from your students there in the room, Kevin?
Yeah, I got one question. You had some interesting content there towards the end, particularly about sort of the signage and education aspects of your work. I was just curious, like, what's the process for who makes the signs and how do you get those up? And I was similar at the school, but some of them are also on private property. So I was kind of curious about kind of that outreach angle.
Sure. Well, it's a mix of different things. So, and I'll go back real quick. I think I can find some of that. So these signs were adapted from Maryland. Actually, we borrowed signs. We found signs on the internet, and we adapted them from Maryland. And this was part of a project at Ukiah High School as well. These signs here were done by Pulse Design Company, and they have a lot of templates. And so we could adapt their templates to our information. And now these have become templates for them. So they gave us something to work with. And these are thick, like poly, beautiful. They came out beautifully. They will last for 10 years. These signs here were designed by a local designer, and then we worked with a local woodworker here, and he created these signs. And I'll just say that in particular, people don't really like signage, I would say, in these rural areas. And so far, these signs have been maintained beautifully, and they have not, knock on wood, they've been up for 5 or 6 years now, and people seem to, because they're beautiful, I think they've been respected, and I really appreciate that. And then I make the changes for the most part. I go out and I change it when it's seasonal.
Great. Well, you have a couple of questions in the chat. The one from Jillian that says, how does biochar factor into water watershed restoration? Is it mainly to get the carbon back into the soil?
It is. And so I think with our vineyards, there seems to be interest as a perennial crop as a potential for a soil amendment. And the biochar is like a sponge, and it also not only for water, but for mycelium and bacteria to basically move into like an apartment complex. And so the mycelium and the spaces in between in the biochar hold water. And so that's a matter, it can, the longer we hold water in the soil, now there, you don't want too much biochar. There's always best management practices. This is just like, I've heard 7%. So it's a rough guesstimate, but, it's an amendment. And it's long lasting. And so it is and it locks the carbon in of the material that you burned. So if we have fuel loads that like a conservation burn where you burn your pile from the top down, it's a slow burn, and it goes into what's called pyrolysis, which is a type of it's a very hot fire that releases less smoke. And so that's, in many ways, biochar is a carbon solution.
Great. And we had one before the students have to leave. One of the questions is, are there any upcoming opportunities for students to get involved at the Galbraith Preserve?
Good
And
question.
yeah, it's a good question. I can answer that as the coordinator for public outreach there. We don't have any projects right at the moment, but we are working on putting together a volunteer program that could involve students. And we're also talking to some of the faculty about trying to organize field trips. And we are working with some of the on-campus clubs on ways to get students up to the Galbraith. But there's nothing specifically at the moment. We do have a mushroom blitz coming up, but it's full. We have no room left in that. But I'll put my information into the chat, so if somebody has a specific idea, we can be more open to discussing that. So I will put my contact in there. It's not right though.
And
Are there?
I should just add that the coho salmon up in Yale Creek on the Galbraith Preserve and in the Upper Rancheria, which is where the preserve is really a historic event this year. And the coho have seemingly gotten into the farthest reaches of these tributaries, as I said, for the first time in decades. So we have confirmed observations. We know they were there. There's good habitat there, and this is evolving because those parts of the watershed where they haven't been observed have kind of, in a sense, been written off, I would say, in terms of priority. So to have the fish turning up now again in those areas will hopefully reprioritize those areas for more funding to keep the work moving up into the further reaches of the watershed.
Great. And Tom asks, Linda, did you talk a bit more about how you all relate the results from your monitoring back to your design?
Yes. So one of the things that we did was with the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited and the RCD is first of all created a prioritization tool. So it sort of goes through the watershed, through the subbasins, and you have like a number of things that, like, if the streams become disconnected, or one of the things that we're seeing in some constant monitoring that we've been having since it's 10 years of monitoring on Mill Creek now. So we can see that our off-stream storage projects are making a difference. That usually there's basically a symbol or what's the word? Like it's like a sorry, I'm totally missing the word, but it will show when the pump turns on. We can see the pumps turn on, and there's like a little jag in the flow monitoring where it just sort of we know that a pump is kind of kicked on. And so one of the things we're trying to do is like basically and I didn't share any of those graphs, but just trying to even out those spikes from the pumping. And so that is one way that we're able to see that these projects are making a difference, and that the investment is, of course, being worthwhile. We're also tracking sort of the cost benefit analysis. So there's costs to these different projects. You can see tanks are big, they're getting more expensive. Are they ultimately going to be the best projects going forward? Well, yes, probably in some situations, but the large wood projects in comparison are much less expensive and also very effective. So it's a little bit of death by 1,000 cuts, and then restoring the watershed by dozens of, you know, dozens and dozens of projects. But I will say that I think what we are seeing is that when we nudge nature in terms of the restoring natural processes, we're just giving a nudge that nature responds really quickly. Even the things that have maybe taken decades to unravel, we're finding that it can turn around in just, seasons. And so that's also the encouragement I would give to students, is that with that little bits of nudge, that we can help guide the natural processes in ways of not overdoing it, that nature responds really quickly, and the fish are responding, which is really cool.
Yeah, your data is quite remarkable. And I think our students have had to leave because there is another class coming into the classroom.
Okay.
If there are other questions, if you'd like to unmute yourself and directly ask them to Linda, I think that might be easier than having to type them into the chat. So feel free to do that. Just unmute yourself and get your questions out there.
I'm just going to call you out, Gabrielle. I can see you Gabrielle on the call, and I know Gabrielle's been doing some exciting work in the upper parts of the watershed. Do you want to talk to us a minute?
We were just thinking of what question to ask, and we said, Linda, when are you going to come out and tell us what to do? Let's see. We're up in the headwaters where the tractors drove up the little creeks and then dragged the logs down, and so they're all pretty wrecked. And we're finding that just the two of us with our hands, when we come across, when we're just exploring out in the woods, just throwing sticks in to try and make little teeny tiny dams everywhere. There's places in 5 years, we've brought the level of the stream bed up a foot to reconnect the floodplain. And it's like Linda was saying, it's just astounding. Just little tiny tweaks in the right direction, nature takes over and amplifies it.
That's great.
That's great. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there other comments or questions for Linda?
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Linda. That was a great presentation. It's exciting to see progress in the right direction.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I have, I've always been an optimist, but I feel, and sometimes just want to say that I think more recently, especially during the drought years, I was kind of really beginning to lose hope, to be honest, a little bit. And that was especially worrisome, being an optimist, when you start to lose hope and things, you're like, oh dear. And then what we've seen now in these past 3 years of good winters, and seeing the response that we're seeing in the fish population, yeah, full on steam ahead. We can do this.
And if you're interested, there's a very good article in the last issue of Bay Nature that is about some of the works that Linda has actually been doing about the creek restoration and the return of the salmon in some of the creeks in Mendocino. It's an excellent article. I really highly recommend it to you. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we are in the process of developing our spring series of Dig into Nature events, and invite you to give me any ideas of what you think you would be interested in. I'll put my email again in the chat, because as I say, we're just designing this now. And you are all on our mailing list now. And so as a result of your signing up for this event, so you will be getting notice of our events as they are designed. And hopefully we will see you all back here in the spring for the next event. And thank you, Linda, so much. And thank you, Kevin. I know Kevin's gone, but thank him for letting us be part of his classroom today. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity and for all of your attention and showing up today. Really, it's great to see you.
Yes, thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.